Now, Kim is joining us from the Office of the Guardian. Hi, Kim. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.
Yeah.
It feels like it should be Friday. I don't know, some other day.
I know. The days
I
kind of
know.
blur together, don't they?
They do for me, they do. So we have a lot to talk about today, a lot of interesting information.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll tell you about the end result of the meeting.
Yes.
And there's the whole story behind it. So we'll start here. Okay. So more real history of the world, or real history of Earth. We're going to start with that.
Okay.
So 18,000 years ago, it's a long time ago, the destroyer came back. In other words, he was locked away for a little while, but he ended up coming back through, and he began to destroy planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, the planet was getting too light for the lower astral. And he was tasked, it's actually the name, the destroyer, is actually written in the Bible, believe it or not. And you can find it in, I think it's Genesis. And he began fighting or destroying all of the tribes that were living in the world, because we were all tribes at that time. And he did a lot of things to all of those people, and the people were losing the battle. But one of the most momentous things he did at that time was the time that we lost Luna, our original moon. Mm-hmm. So for 2,000 years or so, give or take, the Earth was flooded, and this is the story of the Great Flood. Now, in order to, let's just say, stop his destruction of the planet, in all the people and all of those living here at that time, there was an agreement. It was called the Armistice Agreement. And the Armistice Agreement had a couple of ancillary agreements along with it called the Destroyer's Creed, which were rules that he would have to live by, so they would have to live by, so to speak. And then there were rules that we would have to live by. And the second part, a second agreement that went along with the Armistice Agreement was the Mortality Agreement. So it was an agreement that we would only live so long, the planet would only live so long, and ultimately there would have been a harvest and we would have all been doomed. This was the Armageddon program that went along with that. So once this agreement was signed and ratified at the time, they brought us a megalostructure, which is what we now call Earth's moon. But this is the story behind it. And this began the curse, so to speak, on all of humanity, the enslavement of all of humanity, and it was also the beginning of disease. So yesterday, we actually found the keystones, which were in the lower astral, which were the original blueprint for all of disease on Earth. Now, this disease program, and this is not only the disease of humans, but it's also diseases for the planet, diseases for plant life, diseases that created deserts. There was a lot in the original blueprint that created disease. So the places on Earth where the pillars of disease came in, there were 3 of them. And the 3 pillars of how disease came to be on Earth were also had their own binding, each one of them. And each one of them had 6 additional sites that were tied to each one of the pillars around them, so to speak, with the pillar at the center. And this allowed for disease promotion throughout the entire world. So the first location is called Socotra Island, and it is off the coast of Yemen. It is also called Dragon's Blood Island, coincidentally, and it's tied to the Hoque, H-O-Q, caves, is the location where the pillar was. And this place here, we actually discovered yesterday, and although there was no connection to the lower astral anymore and no connection to the keystones anymore for disease, uh, there still was some cleanup work to be done in this location. There was a number of different things. This was like a transmitter location for disease. It would transmit disease to its ancillary 6 locations in the formation of the Star of David, because that's the binding, just like the financial system video I had done a long time ago, as it was for most all control systems we had here. The second location, and you're going to know this one, it's called the Wuhan Greenland Center. All great things come out of Wuhan, don't they? And it's just a wonder where they could have gotten such things like a coronavirus. I don't know where such things would have come from. But it is the 4th tallest building in the world, and you can see that there. That would make a wonderful transmitter, wouldn't it, for disease?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And its 6 ancillary locations around the world were also taken care of earlier today. So although the reason why this all is coming up today is because I'm giving the locations because they need to know that we've disabled them. Because they're losing badly. I mean, badly. And it's been a steamroll of events on our side of it. We've never stopped moving at all, regardless of what meetings were promised and things and lovely money and wonderful, amazing things they promised us. We've never stopped moving on our side because these people can't make a decision at all. And there's actually a definitive reason why they can't make a decision. And we'll get into that. Now, the third location, so we can finish the pillars and the source of all disease on planet Earth, is the Bern Cathedral. And the Bern Cathedral also held the same transmitter. It's a little bit older than the Greenland Center Tower, but I'm sure there was a smaller spire of some sort in that location before they got to the Greenland Center. Now, these things have existed for thousands of years.
Okay.
Now, I guess we'll touch on the meeting from here.
Can I ask Kim a follow-up? So if you take these locations out or their ability to transmit these diseases, what does that mean for humanity? Does that mean that new diseases can't form? Does that mean diseases in our body automatically die? Or what is the result of your efforts here?
Well, let me give you an example. We use Rife machines and quantum biofeedback machines and all of these things. And practitioners that use these machines will see various things that will pop up in, say, all their clients. They'll run their frequencies on the machines. And from time to time, you'll see things like chromosome 1p show up. And then it will go away after about a week. It's not showing anymore, but it'll be consistent through every single one of their clients. Or it'll show things like different other diseases. That is the precursor for cancer in all humans. And then you'll see other kind of funguses that will show up and a variety of things, harmful parasites that harm humans. And this was all being transmitted throughout the world by these 3 sites. And their ancillary, each one had an additional 6, and each 6 had an additional 5. It's a long story, but it was a process, let's say. And this was all part of the mortality agreement in order for us not to all die. So the armistice agreement is not the one that they wanted me to sign in this meeting. And I can tell you about it because it's never going to happen now. But it is the reason why they put the fear of God in the people that were supposed to come here to meet me to get me to sign this agreement. They explained that there is a curse on planet Earth, and it's held by 2 different locations. One of those is the overlay site in Russia, and we're going to talk a little bit more of that. And the other one is actually in the United States, and the center of it is in Washington, D.C., and we'll talk more about that too, so I can give you more detailed instructions. And the curse had to do with something that happened a very long time ago, long time ago. And it is what gave the deep state, the ancillary people, and many others so much control on this planet. And so they wanted me to re-sign this old agreement to re-up the deal. And then they would have promptly put me in stasis somewhere. That was their plan. And just like they did to other people that we know. And then the world would have forever been cursed. But little knowledge is dangerous for these people, and they don't really understand. They understand some things, but they really don't understand how that all happened and why it happened. And then this would, in effect, close the flower, and all the work that we've been doing would have been reversed. That was their thought.
Right.
So I had this whole plan for this meeting. Well, they weren't sure that the person that was supposed to get me to sign the agreement was going to be able to achieve their objective.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tried to forge my signature on the document and submit it to their handlers. Okay. Now, this came because, I guess they think I'm not bright. So it came from actually a Kuwaiti family who is also a member of the Order of the Dragon family. And the original order to get me to sign this would have come out of China. So the reason why I said I would welcome the meeting is because I had a whole plan, because I knew no matter what, in order for that agreement to be valid, it would have had to gone into the Hall of Records and it would have had to been ratified. Yeah. So given the fact that I could have a conversation with myself at any given moment after they left, I would know that that would never happen because I'm actually in charge of that as well. And therefore, nothing would have happened and it just would have been a giant circle. But a friend of mine, we'll call it a friend of mine had been offered $10 million to get me to sign this agreement. There was $500 million at stake, which was donated by the Kuwaitis per the order of the Chinese. And to complete this task. So I thought, well, my friend could use $10 million, I'm sure. So I'll go do it. I'll do it. Let's do this. And I'm sure he would have been monitored, during the whole time. So I had a plan. Since nobody understands how on either side, I'm pretty much the only one that has the record of how it happened in the first place. And it began with two people thousands of years ago. And it's not Solomon in this case. And I had this elaborate plan to create an entire ceremony that has to happen. Now, the agreement, unbeknownst to the other side, to our enemy that wants this signed, they were unaware of the fact that it had to be done by midnight GMT time on Monday. Mm-hmm. And I told them so. I said, if it's not signed by this time, then there's no point. Mainly because, number one, I'm constantly working and doing other things and unwinding other things and lots of stuff. They were under the impression, and still are, that they have until July 4th because they think somehow bindings have something to do with the Constitution and Independence Day, which is absolutely not the case in any way. Besides, we're several calendars down the road from that point. We were not on a we were on a lunar calendar at that time. They really, little knowledge is dangerous. Little knowledge that they have is good for us, right, and bad for everyone else. So I told them, I said, okay, fine. I said, come on over. I know I have to read it. I have to be allowed at least 2 hours to read the agreement. And then I have to sign it in the special way it has to be signed. Okay. So I had big plans. I really did. Number one, I would have read the document and I would have read it properly. And I do know they always put hidden text inside the documents. So you need some kind of like a light acid or something like that, like a lemon, as an example, in order to see the hidden text that's in there.
Oh, you can't even see the text. I thought you just meant it was like
Oh, no, they would have put words on the pages. Yeah, they would have put words on the pages, but it's the hidden stuff that you need to actually read. So instead of I could have done it quickly or I could have done it slowly. I could have taken a Q-tip, for example, with just dabbing it in the lemon and just stroking slightly on the paper to make sure that there's no, hidden text. And if there is, I have to read that as well. And I'm sure it wouldn't have been in English. So then I got to translate it. And boy, does this take a long time.
Right.
Next, we must also sign it in the language of song. So I had some Tibetan bowls and all kinds of things set up, where we were going to do some gonging and all kinds of things in this elaborate ceremony. Mm-hmm. Then we must complete the signing in the language of dance.
Just picture everyone dancing around this contract.
Everybody get up. Day, he said, day, oh, daylight coming. Just kidding. No, I figured it's the frequency of the song that matters. See, you hear. So this particular song works really well. It worked well in the movie Beetlejuice all those years ago. I figured it would work well here. Sure. We have to make sure the frequency is there, both high and low, and all that's in order as we dance around the table for a while like a bunch of idiots, which they would have watched and which would have been great.
So that's a stalling technique, obviously, to get to the deadline or just to
I would have done anything I had to do to pass 6:01 p.m. my time locally here, and then I would have just got up and walked away. It doesn't matter if I signed the agreement or not. Really, it doesn't, because it would have never been ratified anyway. But I explained to them that I have needs too. You've got 10 million there. I mean, I have to read this agreement thoroughly so that I can fully understand everything that's in there, and then I'll give you a price. Now, why would I do that? Okay. I explained to them that, Trump never paid me the money that he owed me for all that those transfers to the United States, my administration fee. Nobody else had paid me. All the deals I tried to do with Chinese people, they never paid me, and I knew who was behind it, so I assumed they were never going to pay me ever or adhere to anything they compromised in the agreement, if there was such a thing to be done. And so I wanted money up front. I said, it might cost 50 million, it might be 125 million, it might be 200 million, but I want to know, because I don't know that they're going to put me in a box.
Right.
So I don't know this. So I want to make sure I can live a good life and whatever for the rest of my life. So I have needs. And that money would need to be transferred to me and spendable to an account of my choosing before I sign. That would come before the dancing and the ceremony, and all of this. And so that was my plan. Now, I was not going to take a dime of that money. There's a reason for that. It's implied consent. So, but there are a lot of people, around here locally and otherwise that have actually really watched my back, including the people that were supposed to be arriving here to get me to sign the agreement. So I would have given everything to them and then just get up and walked out at 6:01 p.m. local time.
Yeah.
Well, they started arguing amongst themselves. Am I going to sign it? Am I not going to sign it? Is there anything else that need to be in there? And then they never sent the money. So they never came. And it's too late now anyway. It's far too late to actually try to even possibly achieve this task based on all the other work that we've done. And so that's kind of the end of that. So now I can tell you the funny story about what the plan was and why I was like, oh, come to Durango.
Yeah. Gosh.
So I didn't really say anything to anybody about this. And yesterday they tried to come here themselves. Okay. Now they were not granted permission to land. But they were going to try to do it themselves because they figured they could have done a better job than the other people. I'm guessing.
So who would have said they couldn't land, Kim?
There's security on this town. So they run the airport, they run, the heliport, they run the private airport here, they run everything here.
Okay.
They'll detect you if you're coming by car. There is no train that comes here except for the little choo-choo Durango, oldest railroad in the United States, which doesn't really go too far anymore these days. And so they would have found them regardless, of any way they tried to get in here. And, and they're concerned for their safety too. There's a lot going on. And we'll talk about that when we start to talk about debt. So that's the pretense behind the meeting. Now you know, now you understand, and why I would never, that's ridiculous. I mean, it wouldn't have done anything anyway. There's nobody home down there to help you. I'm not interested in signing a deal with Spawn of Satan or anybody else for that matter. But they, again, little knowledge is dangerous, things they don't understand. But there's a reason why they feel that they do understand and that they have hidden knowledge. So let's go back to...
Isn't that the definition of a cult? Hidden knowledge.
Hidden knowledge. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's hidden deep in their brain and tied to a grid, as a matter of fact. So let's go back to Russia. We've talked a lot about Russia. We've talked a lot about the Moscow Gate. We talked a lot about the overlay over the gate and the points and the crystals around it and all of these things. Well, over the years, they kept expanding the gate, the overlay, so to speak. So it went kind of localized there in Moscow, and then they expanded it out to several other sites. These sites are places that you've heard me talk about before. There was the Struve in Finland. We have Stonehenge in England. We have Black City in China. We have Jakarta, Indonesia. Anybody want to know the story about how Sukarno got access to all of Russia's gold and moved a bunch of gold from Russia over to, from the Russian Empire, over to Indonesia? That's an interesting story, and one for the real history of the world and very long. And then said gold went to actually back the Federal Reserve, about 210,000 metric tons. And this all had to do with the overlay, tied to actually this particular gentleman's tomb there. Wow. Love their dead people, stasis people everywhere, good and bad. St. Petersburg, we talked about the St. Petersburg site, and then, of course, another site in Macedonia. What we didn't realize, and, like I said, we're not God here. We're just going along with the bouncing ball and cleaning up everything the best that we can, is that the original people that moved the flour were actually buried in another site in Belarus, in Minsk. And this site is called Stalin's Line. What kind of line did Stalin actually have? But it's a museum. It's full of things like old missiles and different things. It's supposed to be a war museum. And they were actually buried there the second time. So thousands of years ago, they buried them with the flour so that the flour would constantly stay bloomed. And then they moved their bodies over to this area called the Stalin Line many years ago, as they were completing their second expansion of the overlay. Now, this overlay grid was pretty much utilized by the Order of the Black Sun. Remember, the Ukraine was the original location where the Order of the Black Sun was formed, and that's why they're wearing the Black Sun on their uniforms right now, and they're causing holy heck over there.
Right.
So it had expanded so far, it went like all the way from, one end in Finland all the way down to Indonesia. Crazy. In all parts in between. So this energy binding is what bound the earth to the lower astral and took away our ability to utilize the heaven gate. Next, it was also utilized as a Wi-Fi grid. Let's call it a Wi-Fi grid, and it's a little bit more intricate than that, but you'll get the picture, with a transmitter which would transmit instructions from the Aldebaran star system and the Abraxas AI, because remember the Black Sunners are the Abraxans, and it would give them instructions from them directly to their head using an implant.
There we go with the implants again.
There we go with the implants again. That's right. And they're not implants in the way that they lay in a chair and someone sticks a computer chip in their head. It's a lot more, how do I say it, intricate than that, and much more advanced technology than that. But this was what is driving them. Remember I kept saying, gee, they're like those little wind-up toys. They go right off the cliff and you don't even know why they're going. It's because the instruction set hadn't been fed any new instructions based on the different circumstances since the death of all the Abraxas.
Right.
So there was no one actually telling them that something had changed. The world had changed, and they weren't getting instructions on how to fight properly, how to fight the war properly by doing this. Because of there's no new instructions. They just keep going like they already won, and this is why. This is the instruction set. Okay, next. That's the order of the Black Sun. That's how they got their instructions and their orders, and this is the reason why they keep walking off a cliff even though there's no bridge anymore. Okay, and why they don't understand why they lost all their money. That's also a big deal that's happening right now. Now that leaves us with the Order of the Dragon. Now, did they also have a similar system? And the answer to the question is, yes, they did. And this is the reason why they thought they had until the 4th of July, because they do not understand what's actually happening. Now let's go to Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has the second gate that is just as prolific as the Russian one. It was a second gate to heaven. Remember we said there was originally 7 and there's 9? So 9, there's 2 9 gates, just like they had 2 lower astral 9 gates. And these 2 were ours, on our side of the fence. So originally, you can see that they started out with the implementation of the boundary stones. And underneath each one of these boundary stones was a crystal, very similar to the ones that were in Russia in a circle. This just happened to be in a diamond shape. Well, right at the center is the Washington Monument. The center of the entire Wi-Fi network for the Order of the Dragon's implants is the Washington Monument.
Wow.
Well, was. How's that for interesting? Another big, large tower, obviously, and nobody really knows why it's in that shape or what it actually did, but there it is. Now you can see. So this is the Wi-Fi tower that began the gateway. So you remember there was a meeting, Alex, I can't remember his last name there, the alleged founder of the Illuminati, and their talks and conversations that they had saying they wanted to build the new world, which would then become the United States. Now, in the discussion about building a new world and building the United States, they were not talking about the United States of America, as in Alabama, Florida, Massachusetts, so on and so forth. They were actually talking about the entire world, the nation states.
Okay.
And this was going to be the control center. And they planned this long before your Constitution and long before all of this. And therefore, the agreement to build this overlay began. because now they would have controlled the one on the other side overlaid with darkness, and they would have controlled the other side overlaid with darkness over here in DC. And they planned to do this to every single one of our gateways until there was nothing left. Then they would begin coming out with the New World Order. So these, let's just say, not so intelligent people think it has something to do with the Constitution, I guess. Maybe that's why they thought they had till the 4th of July, or maybe they thought it had to do with the changing calendar and the ceremony of the solstice, which is celebrated on a different day in Russia. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what bright person, maybe it was the talking in the head to these people that told them they had time. Who knows? Yeah. But nonetheless, you're out of time. It doesn't matter. So the obvious reason for America in conquering country after country after country had to do with the orders that were coming through the Wi-Fi tower in Washington, D.C. Now, they have their people in Washington, D.C. Remember, they've always had their people, politicians and whatnot. Did they insert implants with or without their knowledge into their head? Are they a part of the order? Are they aware of the fact that they are following instructions in their head that are coming from a Wi-Fi tower?
Wow.
And therefore the lower astral. How's this for interesting? You ever wonder why all these things are crazy over there and why they try to keep the ball going and who's running the show behind the scenes? Well, no more Wi-Fi tower for the Order of the Black Sun and no more Wi-Fi tower for the Order of the Dragon. So the expansion process continued here. And the expansion, the first expansion, went beyond the boundary stones, beyond the crystals, and started expanding to the following locations. DuPont Circle is one of these locations. DuPont Circle also had some other crystals and some dead kids there. No surprise. Welcome to Washington, D.C., which were anchoring these different points. And a lot of people online talk about the fact that Washington, D.C. is in the shape of a pentagram. But it's not. It's the Star of David. You're missing all the points. So yes, there are points along the way, but the central point is not the White House. The central point is the tower. It's the monument, Washington Monument. Okay. And the second expansion brought us out to DuPont Circle, Logan Circle, Mount Vernon Square, the Apple Carnegie Library, the Washington Circle, George Washington's Freemasonic National Monument, Freemason, and to Scott Circle Park and the Hanneman Memorial. So these were all anchor points around the monument for the second expansion. Now, the other crystals still were in place, but this began the second expansion. Now, after 9/11, they began the third expansion. And these points were far-reaching, very far-reaching. So they started with the 9/11 Memorial Teardrop. Remember, the Russians are in on it. You know, they're also part of the deep state, Russian deep state. And that began the northernmost anchor point around the monument. We're still going around the monument here. The next point was actually in Haiti.
Wow.
That far away. Yes. And the National Pantheon Museum in Haiti. Then on the other direction, it was the Bermuda Triangle. Right? Remember the old in the actual Giggs Hill Lighthouse on the island of Bermuda. I know, very far. So if you point these points together in the correct order, you will get another pentagram. I'm sorry, Star of David type structure. Okay, Bermuda Triangle, or the island of Bermuda, was connected to Chicago and St. Patrick's Catholic Church. Remember the gray stone we found underneath there? also gray stones in Bermuda. The southernmost point was actually in Red Mountain in Alabama. And the next location was actually in Amarillo, Texas, which was tied to the line in Haiti. And the Helium Time Columns Monument just kind of looks like a antenna, the old style antennas that we used to have on our house. So all these points connected together to create the dragon grid. Now, both grids wanted to expand, so they encompassed the entire planet Earth eventually.
Right.
So they kept expanding these grids over time, these bindings, these Star of David type, it's a quantum physics binding, on either side of the Earth until they finally covered the entire Earth. Now, the story they told my friend, who was supposed to approach me and have this meeting here with me, is that if these things were ever removed, hell, fire, and brimstone would come to the earth. Now, the reason why they believed this was going to happen was because of the Armistice Agreement. Now, the Armistice Agreement is no longer in effect, and there's no more destroyer, and there's nobody left to adhere to this agreement, and there's nobody left to adhere to the mortality agreement, which they also apparently didn't know expired. Hence the reason why they've been running around to all of these sites at the Centers for Disease, real disease, Centers for Disease Control, so to speak, or the implementation of disease, however you want to put it, all over the world all day today, because they figured since there wasn't an agreement, they weren't permitted to land here, my friend's probably no longer willing to come, so now what? Well, we still have the mortality agreement, and if nobody's going to come and enforce that agreement, we're going to do it on behalf of our friends in hell. I know. So they figure if there's less people on this planet, and they can kill us all off, then they can install whatever grids they want, and then eventually, once they figured out, this is a quote, by the way, once they figured out how I do what I do, then they're going to take it over, and then they're going to kill me too. So I probably would have been one of the last to go. And given the fact that the Order of the Dragon doesn't have that hive mind chip type thing anymore, getting instructions, because some of this stuff was pre-programmed in advance. The Order of the Dragon's center point here, the Washington Monument, by the way, was actually tied to the Alpha Draconis star system and the original home of the Draco. I know, that's where their instructions were coming from. I know you're shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also the reason why they kind of have like this hive mind mentality. They move wherever they're told to move, do whatever they're told to do, and so on and so forth. So now the secret behind the orders has nothing to do with the United States per se, but it had everything to do with the reason why they were going to move from the U.S. being the power center of Earth to China being the power center of Earth. And they were going to then implement this global domination thing, and they had all of these wonderful plans, which they kept doing even though the thing isn't there. The bus is not there anymore. There's no more bus. So now what do? You still sit at the bus station and you wait for the bus to come. That's what you do. Of course, everybody does that. Okay, so this has all been the last 48 hours, and this is funny, and I'm not done yet. I've still got more talking to do. I know. So then what happens when people didn't have permission to land here? A call was made to Tom, actually, from the Trilateral Commission, and some general probably tied to the Jesuit order. Same people that didn't get the job done and get me to sign the agreement. And they started talking about the fact that they had access to credit lines against accounts at HSBC. Didn't we? You heard it here first, folks, on Monday. Yeah. So, and would I be willing to give it back to them? And I'm like, I'm kind of the one that took it away, so why would I give it back to you?
Right.
But he said something very interesting, and just so you understand how these people think, they said that there was a made mention of the 23 trillion still sitting at the Treasury Department, and this man proceeded to say that those are foreign funds, therefore we can't use them. And what does he mean by this? Now, this goes back to my meeting and the reason why I would never have taken a dime, even if everybody around here became millionaires overnight. The security people, I still would not have taken a dime because they know what I know. So the first one to take a dollar from the other side concedes.
Yep.
It's the reason why they tried to make it so I couldn't get a job. It's the reason why they tried to make it, you see. So they believe in their mind. Okay, so is it true? No, not really. But they believe that's why he said they're foreign funds, meaning the money did not come from a member of the order. So I am not a member of the order, either side. I'm not a member of the Russian grid people, and I don't have a chip in my head, and I'm not a member of the Order of the Dragon people with a chip in my head. I'm not part of either side. So therefore they are foreign monies and they cannot touch them.
Okay.
See, interesting how the world of crazy, their perception becomes our reality. So, that is only subject to people that are of my line, so to speak. We're of it's not for the average everyday person. Like my friend could have taken money, Tom could have taken money, other people could have taken money, and it just depends on the circumstances, and have, over the years. So it wouldn't have done anything to those people. It's just all about who's going to win the war kind of thing on my side of it. So that's interesting. Now, due to the fact that both grids are down and people that need to know on our side know that both are down, they now know that it's safe to proceed with the cleanup. So I mentioned on the call and on the World Situation Report about the fact that when we filed martial law, we also did a debt call on the Federal Reserve and the United Nations. And without the ability to pay us back the quadrillions of dollars they owe us, we will now begin seizing their properties. In this plan, this is Friday. It expires on the 30th. So there is a plan in place in order to do this in rapid succession. Now, without the Wi-Fi, people of DC getting messages to their brain inadvertently, they have also, and there's also a plan in place to deal with politics. I remember I kept saying they're like my golden retriever. They'll be running after a treat somewhere. I shouldn't say that too loud. Running after a treat somewhere, and then all of a sudden, squirrel, and they make a hard left. It's because the squirrel gets implanted in their head, and the messages go out, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll do this." What a great idea. Of course, the acceptance of said messages also go out in the same fashion. So hopefully, now that that is done, we will have be able to make some more traction, whether that's by force or otherwise, in what is currently the power center of Earth.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Expansion of grids, that's not happening. The dismantling of all of these grids. This DC grid has been completely dismantled all the way from Haiti to Chicago to New York there's nothing left of it anymore.
But the structures are still there, right?
Yeah. We aren't concerned about the structures. We're concerned about the orbs that are underneath there. And the Wi-Fi tower, information tower, and all of that. That's our concern. no stone left unturned, so to speak, but no crystal, none of that whole crystal network is gone, as of the end of the day yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah, the disease control system, or the disease source, disease AI, because disease didn't exist here before, is also dismantled. And I don't know what they're going to try to do to us next, so we'll see. I guess I'll know between now and Friday.
But the hope is that they'll actually start using their real brains as opposed to these frequencies and things that were emitted to them, and start to make smarter decisions. That's the hope.
Yeah, that's one hope. I mean, there's option A and option B here. Option A is you live and you start to make smarter decisions. Now, I don't know if that's even a possibility in some cases. Some of them have just flat out, their entire neurological system started shutting down, and they just started wriggling all over the place and died. So that's a real possibility as well, depending on how much they were controlled and for how long. Others, it would be a hope that, even whether that takes a military brute force or it takes some kind of, people to explain what they're going to do to them under duress, because I don't think they're going to just wake up and go, oh, wow, let's save the planet. I don't see that happening. They want power too much. They think they have power. They would like me to give them back power, So
would we know who any of these people are, Kim, or are these still people that we wouldn't recognize their names?
I don't know. Some of them you might, some of them you might not. I don't really know how many people, have passed away from something like this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. But option B is actually that we just figure out you're non-repairable in any way, shape, or form, and your brain doesn't function correctly, and you disappear off the planet. We have both options, and they have both options. They can choose which way they want to go. But we're all moving forward over here. We're not cliff walkers. We don't have a chip in our head. We don't have somebody telling us what to do, and now we have to try to figure it out. That's not who we are. We are going in another direction. If they want to try to continue with some crazy plan, if you hurt anybody, good luck to you. Good luck to your existence.
Yep.
Such as happened to the ones that were trying to see if they could get some disease going on this planet. But again, we get the information ahead of time. So, we were a step ahead of you before you even got there today. So God bless them, like the way they blessed us.
Yeah, exactly.
And funny, another thing that kind of came up too in having conversations and reading some information provided to us by the ACIO. The company that actually created the mRNA I think it's called Rainmaker. Rainmaker is a part of the SSP that had always been involved with the Center for Disease Controls, let's call them, not the actual CDC, but this center over here. They probably are involved with the CDC as well, and probably the FDA and a bunch of other places that manage disease on this planet. Well, they were actually the ones that created the original mRNA as well. But what they didn't realize, and this is part of the reason why you have so many deaths, is because the mRNA is meant to work on dark matter. It is not meant to work on light matter. Right. So our neurological systems and our bodily functions all function on light matter. We're organic life forms. Their intention to try to use it to control the health of humans based on the ID 2020 and the Certificate of Vaccination Identification program, known as COVID-19, would never have actually worked the way they wanted it to anyway.
Wow.
Yep.
So in light beings, then it would just cause them to just die because their body wasn't recognizing the control element of it?
It throws basically every disease known to man at your immune system, and you have to fight it. That's why a lot of people end up with cancer. It's why a lot of people, it's why a lot of people end up with, cardiomyopathy and other things. It does cause the blood to thicken. It's not the right. It's meant for a cybergenetic being. It's not meant for an organic life form. So depending on how old you were, how your immune system functioned, and whatnot, would determine how well you fared through its functionality over the course of the 3 to 4 months that it was active in your body.
Okay.
So, and that was courtesy of Rainmaker Corporation, which also runs the Centers for Disease Control on this planet. And that was actually who was actually at one of these sites earlier today, trying to get their disease on. They don't really understand why. Do we still have it? Can we use it to kill them all? They were probably given orders by some crazy person to get that done today, realizing it's their demise. It's theirs. It's not ours.
Because there was something in the news, and we didn't report on it, but there was something going on in New York where they were re-upping something with COVID. I can't remember what it is right now. I wonder if that's somehow related to this. It was like they were expecting COVID to come back, or you know what I mean? Something.
Oh, yes.
COVID.
Oh, yeah. Yes. They would expect everything to come back. Yes, they do. Actually, there was actually talk about China having another wave of COVID as well. That was before, everything was shut down. So, yeah, even though it didn't have its full effect, it still had somewhat of an effect, I think, for a period of time there recently. And so they probably thought they were going to get a global wave of COVID through this network here. They would like to have had that. Matter of fact, on Monday, I mentioned about Biden and Chucky re-signing a COVID-19 agreement, which then filtered into the state of New York. Of course it did. Filtered into China, filtered into, of course, this is being driven by the Chinese deep state and global biowarfare. So now you know the real truth behind all of this stuff, and we learned it, just as you're learning it now. I'm just telling you what we've learned. I'm always learning every day, something new. The unbelievable amounts of control and power they had on this planet was ridiculous, and it wasn't theirs. It wasn't the humans that are running around right now, such as the ones that are wondering where all their money went and their credit lines went and their money they couldn't spend based on the news, the news that I had reported on Monday of them all the accounts disappearing. Word is getting around. They're very angry. They don't have money, even the little bits of credit they had left to do bad things to us and pay people to make wars. And they had big, huge plans with the King of Jordan in the Middle East. That did not happen. That will not happen. Nobody has any money to pay. They were working on also Iran in a number of other places. They really wanted that world war. They like that. That was also part of the armistice agreement, by the way, that we would constantly be in a state of war. So if you're not dying of a disease, then you're dying in a war. And if you're not dying in a war, you're dying by what's in your food. If you're not dying by what's in your food, you're going to die from something that's in your water. It's also directly related to the reason why we have radiation in our water known as fluoride. So a lot of this stuff all kind of, now you're starting to see the bigger picture as far as restoration of Earth goes. It's not just about money. It's not just about projects. What good is it if you're not alive to do it? Yeah. So we really need to be cognizant of the fact that, we're all wanting restoration and everybody's looking for a med bed, or something that, see, they have to use machines on their side. You actually don't. You don't actually need a machine. what you need on our side of it is just that pure connection to source. And healing can happen naturally, but not when you get the book being thrown at you on the daily from everything from your air, the air you breathe. So once this grid was taken down, so I forgot about this part. Once this grid was actually taken down, there was a defense mechanism put in by the Draco, because these are Draco babies, the Order of the Dragon or the Draco babies, splices, which started to surround the atmosphere in the world. So we had a plasma filter that tried to reinstall itself around Earth, which would have caused a deoxygenation of the air. It made it down to about 3,000 feet before we stopped it. So that was positive. But it was designed to go all the way up to 30,000 feet, from 0 to 30,000 feet. And any mountain that is over 15,000 feet or 15,000 feet and higher had a, for lack of a better term, created metals installed. It doesn't have to be large. In said mountains around the world, there's over 100 of them. You can look them up if you want, if you're interested, that were actually tied to the implementation as a dead man switch for the removal of this. Yeah. Well, remember, it was all about the armistice agreement, but the armistice agreement is not in force anymore. So, they were preparing for fire and brimstone everywhere, and if anybody violated said agreement, there was all kinds of traps and triggers and whatnot put in place. So, including, mortality, hence the disease. So, I'm hoping everybody's kind of starting to see the bigger picture here. I mean, I know everybody's waited a long time. I know we all have problems. I know about chemtrails. I know about a lot of things. And we're going as fast as we possibly can. There's not a lot of members on our team that are working with us. We are gaining members that are working with us as well. And we're very happy about that and grateful for them as well. But we've done a lot. I mean, the stuff I'm talking to you about today is so old. It's thousands of years old. It's not like this was yesterday. We're unwinding thousands, if not millions, if not more years of history as fast as we possibly can. And a couple of years wasn't a long time to get all of it done. Like I said, we're over a year, 16 months or so ahead of schedule right now. And mainly because your ground commander is crazy and works ridiculous hours and doesn't stop until the job is done. And that's just me.
Yeah.
So that's the World Situation Report for Wednesday.
Wow.
I know.
It does explain a lot of stuff, though, especially when you were talking about Washington, D.C. and people just seeming like they're just not thinking for themselves, because they're not. And they may not even know it, because they may not even know that the frequencies and everything are happening to persuade them or make them think a certain way. So it's just so interesting. It reminds me of the portal people that we talked about. It's like, why do these people behave this way? This is not human. It's because it's not. It's not human.
It's not normal. Mm-hmm. But yet, all part of the curse. And I didn't even get to sing. I did not get to seal it and dance.